All right, welcome everybody. It is August 19th, and we are here for our weekly live cast. As always, if you have not already signed up for our live cast, we are doing an ICD-10 live cast coming up soon. We are going to be speaking with John Murdoch as soon as he gets his permissions through his office to join our live cast, but we figured that thing out. And we're going to be talking about tablet technology, I think in just a couple weeks, and EMR and the progress that it's made in general. So we're going to be talking about a bunch of really cool topics. And today we're going to be talking about operational versus performance metrics and how that all plays in. If you're joining us because you're registered, then you'll get an invite, or you should get an invite for each live cast as it comes up. And of course, as always, if you have not gotten yourself a copy of Medical Billing Networks and Processes, Practicing Profitability, or Treat or Be Treated, you should absolutely do that today. Definitely good reads, and we talk about soup to nuts, best ways to build successful practices. So Jason, we wanted to talk today about operational versus performance metrics, but I mean, before we get into that, I mean, one of the things that that comes up a lot when I work with practice owners one-on-one is I want to help as many people as I can. In other words, I want to treat as many people as possible, and I also want to make a lot of money. But those two things don't always go together when a patient comes to you and can't pay, right? I mean, there are all kinds of other situations, where that's the case.
Well, always the practice owners. We've said this before on this live cast. They've got hearts of gold and their intentions are pure as the driven snow. But that doesn't necessarily make for a high volume, high impact practice that's going to take a community and start changing healthcare, right? And
right.
So when somebody comes and they've been a patient for a little while and they lose a job or they lose benefits, right? Something can happen, right? There's hardship, there's compliance. I mean, you've treated them, now you've got to take a copay, otherwise you're not being compliant anymore. And so knowing options like hardships, understanding, when you can write off balances, but you want to create policies and procedures for all of that, but at the core of it, though, you don't want to make decisions in the moment of what you're going to do, because those pile up. You figure, okay, I'll push this one off, tell that patient we'll get back, but then 3 or 4 more things pile up. And now it's, well, I don't have time to deal with this. I'll just keep treating the patient that's in front of me, and then volumes start going down, and collections start going down. And all of a sudden, you start to react. Guys, team, wife, mother-in-law, whoever's working in your office, we have examples of all of those. Why aren't we doing this? Why isn't this getting done? And stress goes up, and tension in the office goes up. And we can help avoid that. We can't stem the tide of all things wrong that can possibly affect your practice, but we can get rid of enough of it so that you can manage those things that you can't foresee.
Jason, I wonder how much of that is both practically and maybe even legally feels like something's holding a practice owner back. For example, if I feel like every action I take is going to be scrutinized by an insurance company's legal department, I might be more inclined to take a step back and say, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Maybe I shouldn't be doing the best for my patient because it could put my license at risk. And I think it's interesting to bring that up because actually, I think, John, you're on the line, aren't you?
Can you hear me?
John, hey.
There we
go.
Those do not cease.
Well, right. John, I think it's worth an introduction, but I'll let you do a little bit of that. But John Murdoch is an attorney in the state of New Jersey, and John, I think it would be safe to say that you work specifically, on the healthcare side, but for practices, billing companies, that kind of thing?
Absolutely, and really on the provider side, as well as ancillary issues, billing companies, and all the contractual issues, but also the regulatory compliance issues that affect these practices and companies.
So do you think there is a correlation there? When you speak with practice owners, do you find that because because it's such a litigation fear, because there exists such a litigation fear, that maybe practice owners are less likely to provide the care that a patient might need?
It's a concern, and I think what you're talking about and what Jason was just speaking of is so central to the problems I see with our clients, and it's really that overwhelm that affects them from the fears about what's going on just in the industry, the litigation, just staying on top of everything, managing the problems. Absolutely, these things sometimes they cripple the practices in many ways.
Now, so what ways do you see it? Do you see it cripple a practice? I mean, is it just the reluctance to provide certain levels of care that they think are appropriate, but may be legally nebulous, or do you think that are there more situations?
It's interesting because it affects practices in different ways, and I think one of the ways it that really affects a lot of the practices is that it overwhelms them, slows them down, and that they're petrified to make a mistake. And the smaller the practice is, the more I find this happens. You have a large, group practice. Once you hit 15, 20 or more physicians, usually you have more resources to bring to bear to address compliance issues, threats, whatever demands are on the practice. The smaller practices are scrambling because you'll have an office manager who is answering the phones, scheduling some appointments, and then trying to figure out how to comply, and then also oversee the practice and just putting together everything appropriately to have claims submitted. So they're just overwhelmed, and they're terrified in many cases, and it really slows them down.
It was interesting. I wonder how a small practice gets to be a large practice if they're not able to take risk. I mean, most of the time when you see large practices, they talk about all the risks that they took and things like that. Is it just a matter of the small practice owner, the diamond in the rough that does take the risk out of the majority who don't, or is there or is it like an investment thing? What are you finding is allowing these large practices to come to bear?
Great question. And it's you have several factors, but from what I see primarily, you have physicians who've been practicing for a long time. They don't want to give up any of their autonomy. They want to continue to do things the way they want to do them. And what I find is if a physician or a few physicians, a smaller practice, don't have that much longer before they're going to retire, a lot of times unless there's a compelling financial reason to make a change right away, they're not going to move. They said, you know what, we're going to ride it out. We'll retire 5 years, 7 years, come what may. The younger practices, younger physicians, see this as a reality that they can't really function that well on their own without joining forces to kind of allow other specialists to help them with the electronic medical records, with the billing, with the compliance, and they're looking at we don't want to be here 7 days a week, 14 hours a day trying to figure out everything plus provide services. We need to leverage our abilities, and then also it's a negotiating power. And again, if a lot of times practices feel that unless they join up with larger practices, they're going to be squeezed out with payers. They're not going to get any kind of good rates if they participate in network unless they join, a larger group, etc. So I do see that as a big factor, how much longer they're looking to be in, because physicians don't want to give up that autonomy. They don't. They say, hey, I want to spend money the way I do, and I don't want to give that up. And that's something that we work with physicians when they're looking to make that transition and join a larger group.
Right, yeah. No, I think it's a great point. I mean, most of the clinicians, I would say all the clinicians I've ever spoken with are type A personalities, which
Yes.
is just like me, who, I want to get from A to B. I'm not really concerned with what's in between. And if there's anything in between that gets in my, I'm not going to treat it very kindly.
Yeah.
And Jason, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment, right?
First of all, I need to echo the younger versus the older practice owner, and I hope we have both on the phone listening to us today. We have mentioned, John, how many times to some of our practice owners who, they're in the fourth quarter of their career, right? And you know what, guys, I'm not changing. We'll make little tweaks, but you're right. The younger practice owners, they're hungry. They're looking for it. They're uncertain. They're looking for somebody to give them a blanket that will cover the whole bed and make them feel nice and warm. And it's a hard thing to provide from our service perspective, because we both do the billing as well as provide them the tools for them to choose the coding. To give them both the coding advice as well can be a big conflict for us because of the way that we actually provide our service. So it's one of those things, Ruben, where I love when somebody with John's credentials is able to join us and say, there's a reason to be cautious, but this is doable. You can do this. You can figure this out, and there are the resources out there available for you to get it done. Because it is scary out there with all the changes that are taking place. And ICD-10 coming up, and I saw a countdown this morning, 42 days, 14 hours, to be very specific.
Yeah. Although some people are out there are joking, some odd days and hours left, the government decides to postpone it again. I mean, but it's so interesting that ICD-10 is, it's widely accepted already outside the U.S. It's almost
universally.
Almost universally, and we're just kind of keeping up. It's almost like we have to play catch-up now, but they're still talking about potentially delaying it again, aren't they?
There's talk, but you really can't act like that.
Right.
You can't act. You don't know if it's going to be delayed. Ruben, just to make your point more ridiculous, there are countries that are on ICD-11.
Yep. So
the switch is going to happen. It's going to happen at some point. I know there's legislation out there that says it could be postponed indefinitely, but if somebody says a tornado is coming, you don't just say, I'll get in my basement when it gets really close. You prepare, and you make sure that your family's prepared and your practice is prepared.
So I think that's an interesting thing. ICD-10, John, how are you? Has this even come up with clients that you're working with? Have you talked to them about it? What's going on with that?
And that's a great point, because I could tie in what you're saying and what Jason just said, and especially with the integration of practices. When I speak with physicians, especially the smaller practices, I always say, I don't know how you're possibly doing this on your own. And in those cases, I feel, I urge them to reach out and get, the consultants and the companies that can specialize, like the billing and coding services, and there's other services, but really because they can't, they really can't handle this on their own. And that's what really my conversations with this issue is. You got to get a company out there who knows this and get them involved, because these smaller practices just can't handle it on their own. They just don't understand. They're not even aware that tornado is coming. And
I don't mean to be overly dramatic with the tornado, but I just chose an analogy.
I think it's great, because they just they will react. It'll be like a day or two before, a week before, like, oh no, what do we have to do with this? And it's kind of late at that point. So reaching out for experts, like you guys, is so critical, because they just usually don't have that depth with these practices. And even if they do, to have that layer of someone else taking a look at what they're doing from that detached perspective is invaluable. And I tell physicians at presentations, even the ones that do everything in-house, I said, I will get down on my knees and beg you, if it will make a difference, to have your records audited by an independent, third-party company, because I believe 95 to maybe 98% of all compliance issues will be fixed with that audit. It's amazing. And I tell them, I said, you don't need that many claims. If there's any problems, they'll be revealed right away. And
I have a question about
they lack that depth.
If that's all right, Ruben. When you recommend somebody gets an audit, though, John, and let's just say you ask for a couple of Medicare records, a few commercial, healthcare records, and maybe even just a cash patient or two, for someone. Is that usually the mix that you're asking for, or is there a different direction you go in?
No, great question. Yeah, I recommend it's a mix of the different payers, each physician, and again, typically depending upon the practice, you're billing the same codes. If it's internal medicine, it's the E&M codes, the primarily, they can look at injections, things like that, and it doesn't have to be a lot because typically, what a physician is doing or not doing is going to be reflected in every single claim. So it's not like they're going to be once every 10 claims they'll be doing something wrong. They're usually doing across the board, but absolutely kind of a mix between payers and for each physician to capture the main codes that they're billing and only claims that have not been submitted yet. If there's an issue, we can deal with it. If they've already been submitted, it may bring up other issues. What do we do now? So it's one of those distinctions we take a look at.
That's my next question, then, John. I mean, when you find something,
Yeah.
help me understand. I would love to be able to, articulate. Hey, if you work with, an independent auditor who's going to take a look at this and they find a problem, are you recommending a complete overhaul, back billing, go back and send corrected claims, or is it, hey, we're going to change policies today, we're going to put a record in place? Again, I'll stop putting words in your mouth.
Yeah.
Answer, but.
It's the classic line from an attorney. Well, it depends upon the facts. So each situation we would take a look at. But I can tell you, if there's a major problem, we're cringing because this is indicating a problem for a long time. So one of the big things I tell practices by having this independent audit, and I recommend at least once a year. If something is found, all right, maybe we're not happy that things haven't been done correctly, but now we can fix it. It shows that the practice is being proactive. So if there's ever an allegation of criminal conduct, whether intentionally or recklessly submitting false claims, we could say, wait, look what the practice did. They brought in this independent company. We identified issues. We corrected the issues, and now we have this fix going forward. Yeah, we really at that point we got to consider what to do going back, and it's very, very complicated, especially with Medicare. There's certain timelines for notifying Medicare if you believe that claims are improper, and that's probably a couple-hour discussion. But that's so critical to have that review, fix the problems, go forward. And again, every review I've ever been involved with finds the problems right away. They're very, very glaring. Now, let's say a review is done. Let's say the third-party billing company doesn't detect something and there's an issue. All right, well, at least there's evidence that the practice was trying to comply. They even brought this third party in to take a look. It wasn't detected. Yeah, if a claim's improper, it's improper. But I believe we have a super strong argument that there was no recklessness and there was no intentional misconduct, and that's huge.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, John, you said something that I remember from coaching, from training, and this is interesting. From going forward, then worry about what happened before, and obviously follow up in the future. But the first most important thing you can do is shore up going forward so that you're not adding to the backlog. You're not adding to the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I mean, now you said something interesting with the independent record audits, which is that it should be done annually. Is that something that you think should be done annually with the same group? Is that safe, or should you be looking at different outside groups to look at it each year? Or, I mean,
good question. I think if a practice is comfortable that they have a good company, I don't see any problem with having it done with the same practice. If there's any concern or if they just want a fresh look, they may want to have someone else take a look. But I think if they found a company that has the credentials, has done a good job, I think that's perfectly acceptable. So they don't need to exhaust all different sources. I think that's good. And what we always recommend too, it's done through an attorney, and this way if something comes up that's really terrible, we can assert attorney-client privilege. So the consultant or the third party who is reviewing the records comes in through the attorney. Something terrible is detected, we could make the argument that that company was acting on behalf of the client through the attorney, so we can assert attorney-client privilege.
right.
Of all the information that's developed. It's no guarantee, but it's a way to do it. And I'll tell you another thing. that protects the billing company and protects the client. Is because now, with HIPAA and business associates, uh, with the changes under high tech, this business associates can be held directly liable for violations of breaches of the HIPAA security rules. So what I always do when in these situations, as a law firm who's going to get the information, I will have an agreement with the third party who's reviewing the records, the client, the medical practice, and in the agreement we'll say the only records that are being provided are de-identified. So it's like, let's say patients 1 through 20. There's no name, there's no date of birth. All the identifiers are stripped. And so this way, one, we've de-identified the information. If somehow uh, I lost the records, or the third-party billing company somehow lost records, they're de-identified. Nobody can determine who the patient is. We don't have to worry about an issue under HIPAA, and just gives a lot of protection. And really, the billing company and the law firm doesn't need to know it's patient John Smith. It's just patient number 1. We found these issues. Patient number 2. These are the issues, and it's an extra level of protection for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair thing to do. I think in general, when you're, I mean, I've seen this before, and it's not a consistent problem, but I've definitely seen it happen more than once. And Jason, you're finally into the social media atmosphere, so maybe you've seen this, but clinicians discussing patient care on public social media.
Oh, yes.
John, so John, you're aware of that?
Oh,
painfully, it sounds painfully aware, Ruben.
Yeah, and I do a lot of HIPAA privacy work, and this is one of those hot issues. We have probably once every 3 weeks we get a new variation, and I just gave training to a very large practice here in New Jersey on Friday. I have a follow-up this Friday for another one of their locations, and what we say is the first concept with the patient information. You treat it like a governmental secret. That level, you treat it like gold bars. You don't touch it outside of work. You don't talk about it. You leave it alone. And so what that means is there's no discussion on social media. There's no pictures in the office. We've had pictures. Oh, hard day at work. Picture, and in the back are medical records.
Oh no.
So we had one Instagram. Little video, this is what's going on, and behind it is a computer screen with the billing information for patients.
Oh man.
We've had people taking pictures outside. Oh, Judy and I started 10 years ago the same day. Look, we're here together as a patient's walking in the door. That's a problem.
Right.
So we say no pictures on the premises. You want to take a picture, go down the street. Don't talk about it. I'll give you an example. Of course, the facts have been changed a little bit to protect everybody, but 2 employees of a practice are, hanging out, the restaurant, the bar area. They're talking, and they say, "Well, there's this patient. Yeah, he's got this funny walk. Well, we can't say his name because that's protected by HIPAA. Yeah, but he's got a funny walk. Yeah, and why would he pick that car with that weird swoosh on the side?" No. Well, everybody knew who Tony was because everybody knew the car. Right. They just identified Tony and they'd also spoken about some of his treatment, thinking, oh, we just won't use the name. And I tell the employees, these practices, nothing. And I said, if they have the name of a pet rock, that's protected. Anything that touches that patient, because you never know. You just don't discuss it. I can't tell you how many times we have weird issues, and people think, oh, nobody will know who it is. I said, absolutely not. You can say, hey, we treat patients with this type of issue, that's fine, but you don't get into any specifics. It's amazing. We actually had a case, plastic surgeon showing pictures before and after. And the after picture is the woman, in part of the picture, you see the neck and you see this beautiful necklace. Well, the necklace was handmade. Somebody knew who that was. They were there at the birthday party when she received the gift. They thought nobody would ever know.
Wow.
There it was. It's amazing. So there's a way, unless it's something that's required, it's permitted by law, you got to get that authorization from the patient, and it's amazing the variations on this. I'm sorry, I could talk about that all day.
Yeah, no, keep going.
Issue. Huh?
Yeah, no, it's obviously a hot button issue. I know I see it every day. X-rays I see posted. I see, you know, even blacked out charts posted where,
Yes,
clinicians are talking to each other. And, I mean, when you're talking about, patient information, I mean, I don't know that somebody's going to look at an X-ray and say, well, that's Jane, I can make that connection. But, I mean, why risk it, right?
that's
I mean, I think
exactly
that's kind of the point, right?
That's exactly right. And I tell all our clients have two minds, and I find this to be very helpful. One mind is we're going to do everything to comply and make sure nothing inappropriately is disclosed. There's no terrible promise. But the second mind is something terrible is going to happen you never imagine. It may be a rogue employee, it may be a hacker. And at that point, you want to be able to demonstrate, hey, this was not that we didn't have a compliance program. We really tried to comply. Look at all the good things we did, especially if they find out about a problem and they correct it. Give yourself credit, document it, and as the attorney, I want to be able to say, which I've been in the position to say to the Office of Civil Rights, well, this issue happened, we immediately corrected it, we immediately had training, we have policies in place to make sure it never happens again, and look at all these other good things they were doing. I've had situations where there was no fines. Uh, if I'm in a situation where something happens, the client says, yeah, well, we really tried, but we really don't have anything documented, I'm in a bad place.
Right.
And I'll tell you, one of the things I do, happy anybody who's interested in this, is I do a weekly, it's Murdoch's Monday Morning Memos. It's no more than, yeah, it's catchy, huh?
I like
Uh,
it.
no more than 3 sentences. And it's a little HIPAA tip. And I started this actually for very small physician practices because I would get the same questions every day. Um,
Yeah, I
I
wonder
send I
how did
send
John?
it out. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
how do people get that? Is there like
Oh,
a website they can go to sign up or?
if they shoot me an email, that's fine, and
Mhm.
I'll put them on the email list. It's J Murdoch, JMURD as in David, OCH at WILENTZ.com. And what it is, it's meant to be because everybody's so busy. And again, this was set up for the small practice. It's no more than 3 lines. It's usually a question or a specific point, and maybe a hint and a tip. And what I tell the practice to do is when you receive it, think about it. Does this even apply? Whatever
Mhm.
it is, send an email to yourself and take some action. Oh, we took a look at this issue. This doesn't apply. Or, oh, that's a great point. We've corrected this. We had a 2 minute or a 5 minute staff meeting to discuss this. What that's doing is every week it's showing you're taking some type of steps to comply. It doesn't make sure that you're complying, but it gives you some evidence. And I have some practices that post them in their waiting rooms, some that distribute them, some that have a Friday morning coffee meeting, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and they talk about things that are going on. They talk about the issue, and I'll give you an example. One is make sure that when patients move through your offices, they can't see other patients' medical records. Hint: make sure in your billing office that stacks of other patients' charts are not visible, because in a lot of these small offices, you go into the billing office to talk about your bill, and you see 50 to 100 other records.
Right.
And practices didn't even think about it anymore. So they went and they cleaned them up. Now it showed that you took some action. And that really helps me to defend the practice.
Yeah, and I think that's invaluable. I mean, John, just so that I'm clear here, Wilentz is the name of the firm that you work with?
That's right. Wilentz Goldman and Spitzer here in New Jersey.
All right. Well, that was a lot of names,
Yeah,
but Wilentz. We'll start with that.
that's right.
Wilentz, Goldman, and Sachs. Okay.
And Spitzer.
All right. So, is there a good website for the firm?
Yeah, you go to just www.wilentz.com.
Oh, see, now we're talking.
Now we're talking.
Now
And it's
I
funny
want to make
because,
it so easy for people to find you. And will you come back, John? We'd
absolutely,
love
I'm
to
happy
have
to
you.
talk about we deal with all the issues regarding providers and all the related businesses.
Well, I think it's safe to say that that this was probably the most valuable live cast that we've done so far. But I mean, I know that for me, recommending practices to do annual internal independent record audits and thinking about those two minds. I mean, those two things for me were just so easy to see as things that need to be focused on and done. But Very cool. So let's round up for today, guys. Next week we're going to be talking, I believe, to Michelle, and next weekend we're going to be at a conference in Orlando. That's going to be the FCA conference, and then not again until I think September, October. Again, if you haven't gotten any of our books yet, Medical Billing Networks and Processes, Practicing Profitability, Treat or Be Treated, all on Amazon, all on sale. So feel free to pick them up and let us know what you think. So again, thank you, John. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
And have a
Thank
good
you
day,
so
everybody.
much.
Take care.
All right. Thanks,
All right,
guys.
take
Bye.
care.